The moment I walked back into that sterile, fluorescent-lit hellscape they called an office, my gut twisted. 2 weeks of medical leave, and my workspace looked like a crime scene. Stacks of unfamiliar reports on my chair, my nameplate shoved aside like an afterthought, the lingering scent of some aggressive men's cologne that screamed temporary replacement. The leather seat still held the indent of someone bigger, someone who'd made himself at home. I didn't have to wait long to meet him. "Ah, the compliance queen," drawled a voice behind me before I'd even hung up my coat. There stood Brad, my new VP in a suit that cost more than my monthly rent, Bluetooth earpiece gleaming like a crown. Sales guy moved fast, cut the fat. "Don't sweat the paperwork, I'll keep it painless for you." Then, with the charm of someone tossing crumbs to a pigeon, he added, "Let's be real, your job title was always a little decorative." I smiled the kind of smile that hides the mental filing of every word for later. Fine, Brad, I thought. If you won't respect the role, you'll learn to fear the rules. The first team meeting was a masterclass in arrogance. Brad pitched efficiency, like it was gospel code for slashing safety checks and bulldozing protocols. When I handed him the compliance manual, he flicked it open with one finger and smirked. "Cute. I've been closing deals since you were in diapers." The room ate it up, especially when he promised quarterly targets in half the time. But I noticed the way his charts fudged the fine print, the way he dodged my questions about vendor vetting. Later in the break room, I overheard him bragging to his golf buddy on speakerphone. "Compliances, just speed bumps for people who can't drive." That's when I started my little project, a bulletproof log of every cut corner, every unsigned waiver, every time he prioritized swagger over safeguards. Not revenge, just thoroughness. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. Brad stormed into my cubicle, waving a flagged audit report. "You knew this would trigger a review," he hissed. I sipped my coffee calm. "Actually, you knew. Page 42 of the manual you skimmed." His face went scarlet. But the real twist, the next morning, HR called me in, not to reprimand, but to promote. Turns out, while Brad was busy playing CEO in waiting, the legal team had been quietly reviewing my documentation. Now guess who's the new interim VP of operations. Funny how decorative titles work. And Brad, let's just say he's learning the value of reading fine print from the unemployment line. Psst. If you're nodding along, hit subscribe. Trust me, corporate karma tastes sweeter with company. Brad's little compliance police jokes at team meetings were like bad sitcom punchlines, forced stale and only funny to him. He'd lean back in his chair, grinning as the junior sales guys chuckled on cue, while I scribbled notes in the margins of my legal pad, dates, times, direct quotes. My personal favorite, "It's not rocket science." He wielded that phrase like a weapon, slashing through policies he couldn't be bothered to read. One afternoon, I caught him initialing a vendor contract without the required conflict of interest disclosure. When I flagged it, he winked. "Relax, Tiger. We're all on the same team." Team. Right. Like a fox and a chicken coop are on the same team. By Friday, my inbox had 3 unanswered warning emails to him, each more meticulously cited than the last. I pictured them buried under his avalanche of unread messages, like grenades waiting to go off. But the real gem came when his assistant, Maya, a frazzled intern, with the perpetual look of someone who just survived a tornado, accidentally forwarded me his reply to one of them. "Just archive this crap. She'll burn out by Q3. Oh, Brad, you sweet, clueless man." Then came the quarterly report. Normally, these documents were pristine, every I dotted, every T crossed. This one looked like it had been assembled by a sleep-deprived intern at 3 a.m. Wrong dates, missing signatures, and the compliance section blank, not overlooked, erased. Like someone had taken a literal eraser to the requirements. My fingers hovered over the keyboard pulse, steady. This wasn't just sloppy. This was audit bait. That's when I noticed it, a tiny smudged post-it stuck to the back page. Brad, per your note removed the red tape sections. Let me know if you want the rest simplified, too. M. I froze. M. Maya. The intern. My stomach dropped. Brad wasn't just cutting corners, he was ordering someone else to do it for him. That changed everything. I closed the file, slid it into my desk drawer, and pulled out my personal laptop. Time to see how Brad liked his paperwork. The discrepancies in Brad's reports weren't mistakes, they were choices. Rounded numbers vanished, expense lines. Dates nudged forward, like a kid cheating on a test. My irritation hardened into something colder, sharper. Incompetence can be fixed. This was deliberate. And when I found the vendor certification with that laughably bad forgery, a signature so sloppy it looked like it had been traced by a kindergartner, I knew this wasn't just negligence. This was fraud in a three-piece suit. I marched into Brad's office, the document in my hand, feeling like a live wire. "This can't go through," I said, pointing to the scribbled signature. "It's not just invalid, it's illegal." Brad didn't even look up from his phone. "Relax. The vendor's in Bora Bora. They'll backdate it when they're back." His tone was so casual, like he was explaining why it was fine to park in a handicapped spot just this once. That's when I noticed the framed photo on his desk, a glossy shot of him shaking hands with the CEO at some golf event. The caption, "Disruptors Club. Top Performers, 2023. Of course, rules were for people who didn't have trophies. The next morning, I arrived early and found Maya crying in the supply closet. "He told me to fix the safety logs," she whispered, wiping her nose with a crumpled tissue. I said no, but She mimed, scribbling over something. My blood went cold. Brad wasn't just risking fines now. He was gambling with people's lives. That afternoon, I sent my 6th warning email this time, CCing legal, with Maya's redacted statement attached. Then I did something new. I printed every damning document, every ignored email, and slid them into a bright red folder labeled Compliance Review, Urgent. I left it on the CFO's chair during lunch, along with a single sticky note, "Ask Brad about the missing fire inspection." The one for the building he approved for occupancy last week. 2 hours later, Brad was called upstairs. He didn't come back. And that red folder, let's just say it wasn't the only thing that ended up in HR's shredder. Brad swaggered through the office like a man who'd never faced consequences, his arrogance practically radiating off his custom-tailored suits. I watched from my cubicle, quietly adding to my growing collection of evidence, each document more damning than the last. By now, my archive wasn't just thorough, it was airtight. Then came the morning I found the email chain. Maya, still shaken from her earlier confrontation with Brad, had forwarded me a thread she wasn't meant to see. It was between Brad and the head of logistics discussing how to streamline a shipment of industrial chemicals. Brad's exact words, "Just mark the safety checks as done. If compliance asks, tell them the paperwork's coming." My stomach twisted. Those weren't just skipped steps, they were lives at risk. That afternoon, I took a walk past the loading dock. The shipment was already there, unlabeled barrels, stacked haphazardly in a corner. No hazmat placards, no safety protocols. Just Brad's signature on a clipboard, greenlighting disaster. I didn't report it. Not yet. Instead, I waited until the quarterly audit prep meeting where Brad proudly announced his record-breaking efficiency. When the CFO asked how he'd managed to cut delivery times in half, I cleared my throat. Actually, I said, pulling out my tablet, I think this might explain it. The room fell silent as I projected Brad's email onto the screen. Then the photos of the dock. Then the forged safety logs. Brad's face went slack. That's taken out of context, he stammered. I tapped my tablet again. Up came his voice from the break room, crystal clear. Sorry, officer paperwork, but some of us have real work to do. The CFO's expression turned to ice. Brad, my office, now! As he stood, his chair screeched like a dying animal. For the first time, his swagger was gone, replaced by the stiff, stumbling gait of a man who'd finally hit a wall he couldn't talk his way out of. I sipped my coffee. 12 warnings, I thought. 13's the charm. The realization struck like a bucket of ice water. This wasn't just about Brad anymore. The rot went deeper. When the CFO waved away forged safety certifications with, "Greg knows what he's doing," I saw the truth. The company had made its choice. Profits over people. Speed over safety. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with 2 glasses of wine and my encrypted drive. The first glass was for my frustration. The second was for what I was about to do. I'd kept one card hidden until now, the unredacted files, the vendor names, the chemical shipment manifests, the maintenance reports showing exactly which inspected equipment had nearly killed a worker last month when a valve failed. Brad's little jokes in the break room captured in crisp audio recordings. Then I made 3 copies, one for the State Regulatory Board, one for OSHA, and one anonymous drop to an investigative reporter who'd been sniffing around our industry. The next morning, Brad was in rare form, boasting to his sales team about cutting through bureaucratic nonsense. I smiled as I walked by, knowing his world was about to implode. It took 4 days. First came the OSHA surprise inspection, triggered by an anonymous tip about the unlabeled chemical barrels. Then, the state regulators arrived, asking pointed questions about forged certifications. By noon, the reporter's story hit. Local firm faces scrutiny over alleged safety violations. The CFO called an emergency meeting. Brad wasn't invited. When security escorted him out that afternoon, his tailored suit couldn't hide the slump of his shoulders. He looked at me as he passed my desk, really looked, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. I just sipped my coffee and gave him the same professional smile I'd been perfecting for months. No words needed. The paperwork spoke for itself. The company paid 6 figures in fines. I got a promotion to head of compliance with one condition: maybe go easier on the red tape. I handed them my revised policy manual. Page 1 read, "There's no such thing as too thorough. Some lessons need to be learned the hard way." The federal audit notice hit my inbox like a grenade with the pin already pulled. 4 weeks until the regulators arrived. 4 weeks until every cut corner Brad had ever taken would be laid bare under government scrutiny. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt the weight of what was coming. That afternoon, I caught Brad in the elevator. He was mid-conversation with the CFO, bragging about how he'd streamlined the new supplier contracts. When he saw me, he flashed that trademark smirk. "Better brace yourself, compliance. The feds are coming to check our homework." The CFO chuckled like it was some inside joke. I waited until the doors closed on their floor before pulling out my phone. 3 quick taps forwarded the audit notice to my personal email, along with every unanswered warning I'd sent about Brad's streamlining. The next morning, the office buzzed with panic. The CEO had called an emergency leadership meeting. Rumor was the audit scope had expanded after an anonymous tip about falsified safety records. I kept my head down, pretending to study spreadsheets while watching the parade of nervous executives through my glass walls. Then came the gift I never expected. Maya slipped into my office, eyes wide. Brad just told his team to fix all the inspection logs from the past 6 months, she whispered. He's having people backdate signatures right now. She handed me a thumb drive. I thought you should know. The drive contained gold time-stamped document edits, frantic Slack messages about cleaning up files, even a video of Brad dictating false entries to his assistant. It was obstruction of justice in 4K resolution. I didn't report it, not to HR, not to the CFO. Instead, I booked a doctor's appointment that afternoon, right across the street from the federal building. The agent who met me in the cafe barely glanced at the folder I slid across the table until I mentioned the video. Then his pen moved faster than I'd ever seen a government employee move. 3 days later, the raid happened. Federal agents swarmed our offices at 9 a.m., sharp-carting away servers and file cabinets. Brad was escorted out in handcuffs. His tailored suit wrinkled his face ashen. The CEO resigned by lunchtime. At the all-hands meeting that afternoon, the interim leadership praised my vigilance. I just nodded, thinking of that thumb drive burning a hole in my desk drawer. Turns out, when you build a bomb with enough paperwork, even the biggest egos can't outrun the blast. The moment Brad said, "Scrub the documents," I knew this had just become criminal. His little pep talk about housekeeping was really a corporate call to arms, an invitation to commit fraud on an industrial scale. The way his eyes locked onto me when he said, "We're all on the same team," made my skin crawl. I played my part perfectly. In that meeting, the dutiful note-taker, the quiet professional. But while everyone else nervously shuffled papers, I was recording every word on my phone, hidden under the legal pad. When Brad tried to rope me into his document falsification scheme, I made sure my refusal was loud enough for the room to hear. If the inconsistencies are real, they're not mine to fix. The way the air went still told me everything half these people knew, exactly what they were being asked to do. After the meeting, I didn't touch a single file, but I did something better. That night, I met Maya at a diner 3 towns over. Over burnt coffee, she handed me a treasure trove, screenshots of Brad's Slack messages, ordering the backdating audio of him coaching his assistant on how to make the signatures look real, even a video of him laughing about which regulations were easiest to fake. The smoking guns kept coming. "You know they'll fire you if they find out," I said. Maya stirred her coffee jaw set. "They already made me complicit. I'd rather be fired than jailed." The next morning, I arrived early and planted 3 identical USB drives in strategic places, one in the CFO's unlocked desk drawer, one in the break room microwave, where the office gossip always heated her oatmeal, and one taped to the bathroom mirror in the executive suite. Each drive contained 2 folders. 1, for your records, every violation, every ignored warning perfectly organized. 2, for the feds, the new evidence including Brad's meeting performance. By lunchtime, the office was buzzing. The CFO stormed into Brad's office and slammed the door so hard the walls shook. HR started pulling people into closed-door meetings, and Brad, he disappeared for 3 hours, only to return with his lawyer in tow. When he passed my desk, I didn't look up from my screen, but I could feel the heat of his glare. For the first time, Brad wasn't smirking. He looked like a man who'd finally seen the cliff edge he'd been racing toward. The USB drives vanished by afternoon, but the damage was done. 2 days later, the first resignation hit. Then, another. By week's end, Brad was on leave pending review. I kept my head down, kept filing reports, only now people were actually reading them. Funny how accountability appears when the walls start closing in. The final warning, email number 42, was my masterpiece. Not a plea, not a protest, just cold, hard facts laid out like an indictment waiting to happen. When Brad replied with that laughing emoji and his "relax, this isn't life or death" line, something in me snapped shut. Because he was wrong. It was life or death. I knew that better than anyone after pulling the maintenance logs for Equipment Bay 4, the one Brad had certified as safe last week. The same equipment that had nearly sheared off a worker's hand 2 days prior when a safety latch failed. The incident report had been buried, of course, but the workers' hospital records weren't. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I called a reporter, not the business desk, the investigative team. "Meet me at the diner on 5th, I said. "Bring a recorder." Over stale pie, I handed over everything: the 42 warnings, the falsified logs, even the security footage of Brad coaching his team on how to massage the data. The reporter's eyes widened when I slid across the hospital discharge papers. "This isn't just about fines anymore," she murmured. I didn't stay to see her reaction to the rest. The next morning, Brad held court in the break room, bragging about how he'd handled the audit prep. His audience chuckled on cue, but I noticed the new intern Jake staring at his shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. Later, I caught him shredding documents with shaking hands. "Those the real inspection reports?" I asked quietly. He jumped like I'd tased him. "Brad said." "I know what Brad said." I handed him my card. "When you're ready to stop shredding evidence, call me." 3 days later, Jake showed up at my door with a USB drive and bloodshot eyes. "I can't be part of this," he whispered. I didn't blame him. The drive contained Goldbrad's personal audit prep checklist, complete with step-by-step instructions on which documents to falsify. At the bottom, in all caps, "Burn after reading." Brad should have known better than to trust a millennial with a conscience. When the feds finally arrived, they didn't just ask for records. They came with warrants. I watched from my desk as Brad's office was emptied into evidence boxes. His face, when they let him out in handcuffs, wasn't shocked, just confused, like a man who'd never considered that rules might actually apply to him. As for me, let's just say the new head of compliance position came with one condition: no more whistleblowing. I smiled and handed them my revised employee handbook. Page 1 now read, "Transparency isn't optional." The morning the auditor's request hit my inbox, I didn't move, just sat there, staring at the words, "all compliance documentation for the past 18 months, until they burned into my retinas. 3 desks away, Brad was crowing about his latest win, some shady vendor contract he'd pushed through without review. His laugh echoed through the office, loud and oblivious. I methodically attached the first batch of files, 10 folders from my personal archive, each labeled with clinical precision. Falsified safety, logs, Yanmar, forged, vendor, sign-offs, Q2, backdated, inspection, reports. No commentary, no highlighting, just the raw, damning paper trail Brad had left in his wake. As I hit send on the 4th and final email, the office door burst open. 2 men in cheap suits walked in, badges glinting. Not auditors, investigators. Brad's phone call cut off mid-brag. "Ian Gregory Masterson." The taller agent's voice carried across the suddenly silent office. I watched Brad's face cycle through emotions, confusion, recognition, then something primal. His eyes flicked to me. For one frozen second, we locked gazes. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just gave him the same professional nod I'd give any colleague. The shorter agent pulled out handcuffs. "We have some questions about your safety certification records." Brad's mouth opened, then shut. The color drained from his face as the reality hit. This wasn't life or death. Until it was. As they led him out, the office erupted in whispers. I turned back to my screen, where a new email had just arrived. The reporter's draft article subject line: "Exclusive how one compliance officer's paper trail brought down a VP." I deleted it unread. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Check your bank account." The deposit was exactly $42,000. Whistleblower reward. I transferred every cent to the worker who'd lost fingers in Equipment Bay 4. Some debts can't be paid with money, but it's a start. The moment the federal agents stepped off the elevator, the entire office froze, mid-breath. Their shoes clicked against the tile with a rhythm that screamed authority, not the polished loafers of corporate lackeys, but the sturdy Oxfords of men who kick down doors for a living. I pretended to study my screen as they passed my desk, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw Brad's coffee cup hover halfway to his lips. The stain spreading across his papers wasn't just spilled coffee. It was the first crack in his carefully constructed facade. Then came the words that turned our office into a crime scene. "Gregory Masterson, we need to ask you some questions about falsified safety records." His laugh, that same arrogant bark I'd endured for months, died in his throat. There must be some mistake. The taller agent cut him off with a single raised document. My email, printed, highlighted, official. As they led him out, Brad's eyes locked onto mine, not with anger, but with something far more satisfying: recognition. The slow, dawning horror of a man realizing he'd been outplayed at his own game. The office erupted the second the elevator doors closed. "Did you know?" Mark hissed, materializing at my desk. I sipped my coffee. "Know what?" His incredulous look said everything, but I just turned back to my screen, where a new email had appeared, this one from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Subject: request for testimony. I hit reply with one hand and reached for my legal pad with the other. Some stories write themselves. This one, it was just getting started. The moment the handcuffs clicked around Brad's wrists, the office became a museum of stunned silence. His tailored suit, always so crisp, so arrogant, now hung limp as a deflated balloon. The agents marched him past rows of frozen co-workers, past the break room where he'd once joked about compliance police, past my desk where I sat with my hands folded, watching without watching. His eyes found mine as the elevator doors opened, not pleading, not angry, just calculating, like he was finally adding up all those ignored warnings and realizing the sum was much higher than he'd ever imagined. The whispers started before the elevator even descended. Falsifying records. OSHA violations. They heard criminal charges. I stayed perfectly still, letting the shockwave ripple through the office. My phone lit up with a text from Maya. "They're pulling his files from the server." Good. Let them see the rot. Let them trace every forged signature, every backdated inspection, every safety check he'd treated as optional. The all-hands meeting notice popped up like a corporate white flag. Mandatory attendance. As if gathering everyone in a room could somehow contain what was coming. I didn't move. Instead, I opened a new email, addressed to the entire C-suite, attached every unanswered warning I'd ever sent Brad. The subject line said it all. Compliance review as requested. I hit send as the conference room doors swallowed the first wave of panicked executives. Some fires can't be put out with meetings. Some need floodlights and handcuffs. The resignation letter practically wrote itself 2 polite paragraphs, thanking the company for the years before Brad, with my last day marked effective immediately. I slid it onto HR's desk just as the emergency meeting spilled into the hallway, executives blinking like deer in headlights. No one stopped me as I carried my single box past Brad's empty office. His abandoned coffee cup still sat on the desk, the company logo facing out like some sad monument to hubris. I paused just long enough to drop a USB drive into his drawer, the one with all 42 warnings, neatly compiled with timestamps. A parting gift for when his lawyers came digging. The elevator doors opened to a lobby buzzing with reporters. I adjusted my sunglasses and walked right past them, the morning sun warm on my face for the first time in months. My phone buzzed halfway to the parking garage. An unknown number. They offered me immunity, told them everything. Maya, smart girl. I didn't reply, just unlocked my car and tossed the box in the back seat. The plant, some resilient succulent that had survived both Brad and my neglect, would look nice on my balcony. As I pulled out my podcast app, pinged with a notification, new episode downloaded, whistleblower wins how one woman took down a corporate giant. I deleted it, unlistened. Some stories don't need narration. The paper trail speaks for itself.